Good afternoon, and good to meet you virtually in the European Commission's press room. Welcome to the press conference on the results of the negotiations between the European Union and the United Kingdom on their future relationship. This press conference is in the presence of European Commission President Ursula Von der Leyen, as well as our chief negotiator Michel Barnier. President von der Leyen will make a statement, as will afterwards Mr. Barnier. Following that, we will take a few questions and we will offer you the possibility of a technical briefing with our experts who held the negotiations over those many months, where you can ask many questions. But before that, allow me to give the floor to President von der Leyen.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon. So we have finally found an agreement. It was a long and winding road, but we have got a good deal to show for it. It is fair, it is a balanced deal, and it is the right and responsible thing to do for both sides. Les négociations ont été très difficiles, avec de tels enjeux pour tant de monde. C'était un accord pour lequel il fallait se battre. Il permettra d'éviter des perturbations majeures pour les travailleurs, les entreprises et les voyageurs après le 1er janvier. Il protégera les intérêts européens et cet accord est aussi, je le crois, dans l'intérêt du Royaume-Uni. Il posera des fondations solides d'un nouveau départ avec un ami de longue date. Et enfin, il nous permettra aujourd'hui de nous assurer que nous pouvons finalement laisser le Brexit derrière nous. L'Europe continue de s'avancer. Die Europäische Union hat in all dieser Zeit große Einigkeit bewiesen. Sie konnte sich auf die Kraft von 450 Millionen Menschen und die Stärke des größten Binnenmarkts der Welt verlassen und stützen. Und wie wichtig das ist, das sieht man diesem Abkommen an, Kapitel für Kapitel und Zeile für Zeile. Let me give you 3 examples. First of all, competition in our single market will be fair and remain so. The EU rules and standards will be respected. We have effective tools to react if fair competition is distorted and impacts our trade. Secondly, we will continue cooperating with the UK in all areas of mutual interest. For example, in the field of climate change, energy, security, and transport. Together, we still achieve more than we do apart. And thirdly, we have secured 5.5 years of full predictability for our fishing communities and strong tools to incentivize to remain so. Of course, this whole debate has always been about sovereignty. But we should cut through the sound bites and ask ourselves what sovereignty actually means in the 21st century. For me, it is about being able to seamlessly do work, travel, study, and do business in 27 countries. It is about pooling our strength and speaking together in a world full of great powers. And in a time of crisis, it is about pulling each other up instead of trying to get back to your feet alone. And the European Union shows how this works in practice. And no deal in the world can change reality or gravity in today's economy and today's world. We are one of the giants. Die Europäische Union ist gut auf den Brexit vorbereitet. Wir wissen, dass dieses Abkommen nicht alle Probleme aus der Welt schafft. Wir haben eng mit Behörden und Unternehmen zusammengearbeitet, um sicherzustellen, dass sie vorbereitet sind. Wir haben in unserem neuen Haushalt 5 Milliarden Euro vorgesehen. Damit wollen wir Menschen, Regionen und Wirtschaftsbereiche, die vom Brexit betroffen sind, unterstützen. So now is the time to turn the page and look to the future. The United Kingdom is a third country, but it remains a trusted partner. We are long-standing allies. We share the same values and interests, whether it be the COP26 summit in Glasgow or the upcoming UK G7 and Italian G20 presidencies. The European Union and the United Kingdom will stand shoulder to shoulder to deliver on our common global goals. Ce moment marque l'aboutissement d'un long voyage. Et je voudrais remercier notre négociateur en chef, Michel Barnier, et son équipe, ainsi que Stéphanie Rizzo, pour leur effort incessant, leur endurance, leur professionnalisme. I also want to thank David Frost and Tim Barrow for having been tough but fair negotiating partners. And I'm grateful to all our member states and the European Parliament for their trust and their support. I will now convene the college. And ladies and gentlemen, at the end of a successful negotiations journey, I normally feel joy. But today, I only feel quiet satisfaction and, frankly speaking, relief. I know this is a difficult day for some, and to our friends in the United Kingdom, I want to say, parting is such sweet sorrow. But to use a line from T.S. Eliot, what we call the beginning is often the end, and to make an end is to make a beginning. So to all Europeans, I say, it is time to leave Brexit behind. Our future is made in Europe. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, President. Now allow me to give the floor to our Chief Negotiator, Michel Barnier.
Thank you, Madam President, dear Ursula. The clock is no longer ticking. After 4 years of collective effort and EU unity, to preserve peace and stability on the island of Ireland, to protect the citizens and the single market, to build a new partnership with the UK. Thank you all. Thank you all. This is the work of so many women and men here in the Commission under your leadership, Madam the President, all the services and in particular the EU Task Force for the Brexit, with Clara Martinez and Paulina Dejmek and all the team, and in the Member States, the Council, the European Parliament. I also pay tribute also to the EU-UK negotiating team and the Chief Negotiator, David Frost, and his deputies. This process has engaged so many citizens, businesses, stakeholders, and obviously so many journalists. Thank you for your patience and for your attention. Today is a day of relief, but tinged by some sadness as we compare what came before with what lies ahead. Le Royaume-Uni a choisi de quitter l'Union européenne et le marché unique, de renoncer aux droits et aux avantages d'un État membre. Et notre accord ne réplique pas. Il y aura donc, malgré cet accord, de vrais changements dans quelques jours, le 1er janvier, pour beaucoup de citoyens et pour beaucoup d'entreprises. C'est la conséquence du Brexit. C'est la conséquence du Brexit. Et nous avons aussi construit un nouveau partenariat pour l'avenir autour de 4 piliers. D'abord, un accord de libre-échange ambitieux et équitable, free and fair trade, fair and free trade, sans tarifs ni quotas. Et au cœur de cet accord, il y a de nouvelles règles du jeu économique, ce qu'on appelle le level playing field, qui seront pour l'Union européenne la marque d'une nouvelle génération pour tous les accords de libre-échange. Deuxièmement, un partenariat économique et social dont le champ est sans précédent. Et il couvre les transports aériens, les transports routiers, l'énergie, la lutte contre le changement climatique, la pêche, où nous avons assuré globalement une base d'accès réciproque aux eaux et aux ressources, avec une nouvelle répartition des quotas et des opportunités de pêche agréées, comme c'est normal, directement entre la présidente de la Commission, Ursula Von der Leyen, et le Premier ministre Boris Johnson, compte tenu du nouveau statut d'État côtier indépendant du Royaume-Uni, c'est-à-dire d'un État qui ne fera plus partie, dans quelques jours, de la politique commune de la pêche. Cet accord demandera des efforts, je le sais, mais l'Union européenne sera présente aux côtés des pêcheurs européens pour les accompagner. C'est notre engagement. Notre partenariat comprend aussi une coopération en matière de recherche et d'innovation, de sûreté nucléaire, pour l'espace, dans le cadre des programmes de l'Union. Dans ce domaine, notre partenariat contient aussi une clause de non-discrimination entre les citoyens européens qui s'applique également aux visas, aux services et à la coordination de la sécurité sociale. J'exprime simplement sur ce point 2 regrets, s'agissant de notre coopération sociétale, que le gouvernement britannique ait choisi de ne pas participer au programme d'échange Erasmus et que l'ambition en matière de mobilité des citoyens ne soit pas à la hauteur de nos liens historiques. Là encore, c'est le choix du gouvernement britannique. Le troisième pilier de notre texte concerne la sécurité des citoyens. Nous l'avons toujours dit, notre sécurité, la sécurité des citoyens ne se marchande pas. La lutte contre le terrorisme et le crime nécessite une coopération évidemment étroite entre l'Union européenne et ce grand pays qu'est le Royaume-Uni. Nous allons travailler ensemble dans 8 domaines essentiels et ce travail sera fondé sur 2 préalables, le respect de la protection des droits fondamentaux, le respect des données personnelles. Ici aussi, pour être très franc, dans le monde très incertain et instable dans lequel nous vivons, nous regrettons que le gouvernement britannique n'ait pas voulu négocier, en tout cas pas pour le moment, un accord sur la politique étrangère, la défense et le développement. Enfin, dernier pilier, la gouvernance de cet accord qui est fondé sur le dialogue, la consultation politique, des mécanismes de règlement des différends contraignants, une mise en œuvre crédible dans chacun de nos ordres juridiques, et puis des remèdes, des sanctions, y compris des remèdes unilatéraux, rapides et efficaces quand cela sera nécessaire. Voilà la proposition d'accord qui, comme l'a dit notre présidente, va être présentée au Conseil, qui réunit les 27 gouvernements, et chacun d'entre eux aura la possibilité, la responsabilité de se prononcer, ainsi que le Parlement européen. Pendant 4 ans et demi, nous avons construit ensemble cet accord, étape par étape. D'abord l'accord de retrait, qui a permis de stabiliser les conditions de la paix en Irlande, de sécuriser les droits des citoyens, de régler des questions financières. Et puis, dans la transparence, le respect et le dialogue, nous avons continué à travailler depuis 9 mois, c'est un temps très court, pour réaliser cet accord de partenariat pour l'avenir, inédit par sa diversité et par sa dimension. Tout au long de ces 4 années et demie, la force de l'Union européenne a été l'unité et la solidarité entre tous les États membres et avec le Parlement européen. Ça a été mon honneur de prendre part à cette unité des Européens.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Barnier. Je vais maintenant prendre quelques questions. Veuillez, s'il vous plaît, lever la main dans les systèmes, comme vous le savez, comme est notre habitude, si vous voulez poser une question. Et je vois que Derek Perrotte est le premier, donc je donne la parole à Derek de Les Échos. Derek, vas-y.
Bonjour, vous m'entendez?
Oui, tout va bien. Vas-y.
Oui. Merci beaucoup. Bonjour Madame la Présidente, bonjour Monsieur Barnier. Les Britanniques sont revenus sur l'accord de retrait négocié l'an passé, quelques mois à peine après sa signature. Dans ce contexte, quelle confiance avez-vous aujourd'hui dans leur capacité à respecter ce nouvel accord?
Indeed, we had already built in the withdrawal agreement strong measures in case that the withdrawal agreement is not being applied properly. The infringement procedure, for example, that we started. And the same mechanisms are in this agreement, that we have strong measures that can be taken if one party does not play by the rules. So starting from rebalancing mechanisms that are built in with dispute settlement mechanism to review clauses and an overall review, for example, after 4 years, to see whether both sides play by the rules, that the level playing field is level indeed, and there's the commitment to follow whatever has been agreed in this deal. So from the experience we've had, we built in safeguards that are necessary to make sure that there's a strong incentive for both sides to stick to what they have agreed to.
I will now give the floor to Verena from DPA. Verena, are you there? So we are waiting for Verena to get connected. Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes, Verena, go ahead. Yes, Verena, go ahead.
Great, excellent. Thank you very much for the question, and good afternoon to the President and Mr. Barnier. Given the extreme time pressure toward the end of these negotiations and the deadline being only 7 days away, are you confident that you really safeguarded all the interests of the Union and of its member states? Or did you have to give in to British demands just to avoid disaster a week from now? Thank you very much.
We had a very strong negotiating position. Indeed, you're right, the time was very, very short. At the beginning of the year, we have already said very clearly that for such a comprehensive agreement, 12 months are really short, and on top came COVID. This did not make the negotiations more easy, and therefore it is outstanding what the negotiating team has done and achieved in only 12 months. That is one part, and our negotiating position was as strong because it was the European Union who said very clear, if the United Kingdom wants access to the single market, the largest single market in the world, without quota and without tariffs, then they are, as a sovereign country, free to decide whether they play by the rules, like every other company in the single market too. This is the level playing field. If they do not want to follow the rules, then there will be quota tariffs, so there is a price to pay for that. And as we knew, in any case, if there would have been a hard Brexit, it would not have been good for both sides, but it would have hit the United Kingdom harder than the European Union, with all its might of 450 million citizens. And therefore, from a position of strength, we were able to come forward with the most comprehensive agreement we've ever had. This agreement will write history. If you look at the clear composition of rules that are very distinct to make sure that there's fair play on both sides, that is a very clear, if you want to access the single market, you have to abide to the rules all the other ones are abiding to. And in the fishery field, I think we made a huge step forward and got a very good agreement. So this shows that from a position of strength you can achieve a lot.
Thank you very much, President. I know that you have to go and inform the college. There is interest for additional questions, but we have a technical briefing where all the questions will be addressed. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us in the European Commission's press room for this press conference, and stay tuned for the technical briefing off the record, which will follow in a few minutes.
Ja, dat is over de persconferentie. Het is inmiddels duidelijk dat het level playing field wat de Europese Unie graag wilde blijft behouden. Het is onduidelijk tot nu toe waar disputen worden beslecht, want het Europees Hof van Justitie klaarblijkelijk staat buitenspel. En er zullen sancties en heffingen worden opgelegd aan de Britten als ze zich niet houden aan de regels. Veel is nog onduidelijk en er zijn nog geen officiële statements verder naar buiten gekomen. Wacht even af tot we Boris Johnson zo meteen in beeld krijgen.
Richting Frankrijk, die dus niet eens meer vrachtvervoer toelieten. Maar toch, het gaf wel even een indicatie wat er met name Kent, het graafschap Kent, waar Dover in ligt, gebeurt. Als daar al die vrachtwagens zich maar beginnen op te hopen. Duizenden waren het er op een gegeven moment. De hele snelweg was stil komen te liggen. Je kon daar niet eens meer door. Er was een vliegveld nodig om al die vrachtwagens naartoe te begeleiden. Daar worden nu trouwens deze dagen de vrachtwagenchauffeurs getest op corona. Want ze moeten nu een negatieve test kunnen laten zien om Frankrijk in te kunnen. Maar inderdaad, dit heeft natuurlijk wel even de ogen geopend. Met name ook het feit dat de Britten er helemaal niet zo klaar voor waren. Dat ze ook een beetje overvallen werden door wat hier gebeurde. En de nasleep daarvan. Dus absoluut. Ik denk dat iedereen zich wel realiseerde wat de consequenties hadden kunnen zijn als dit uiteindelijk niet tot een akkoord was gekomen.
Wat heeft dit nog voor gevolgen voor de Britten in Europa zelf, in de EU en andersom? EU-burgers in Groot-Brittannië?
Nou, die rechten waren in die zin ook al met het uittredingsakkoord waar ik het net over had bekrachtigd. Dus iedereen wist dat hij gewoon een status zou houden. Bijvoorbeeld alle EU-burgers, zoals ik ook hier in Groot-Brittannië, hebben een status kunnen aanvragen waarmee ze in ieder geval zeker waren dat ze hier gewoon konden blijven werken en gebruik konden maken van alle sociale voorzieningen. Dus dat was in zekere zin al wel geregeld. Maar ook het feit dat er nu een deal is, ook daarvan zullen we even moeten afwachten wat de details zijn. Hè? Met betrekking tot visa's bijvoorbeeld, met betrekking nog tot het studeren vanuit de EU in Groot-Brittannië en andersom. Ook dat soort dingen staan natuurlijk allemaal in dit akkoord. Ik heb daar de details nog niet van gezien. Maar nee, in die zin is het natuurlijk ook heel belangrijk dat er afspraken zijn. Want in het geval van no-deal had het ook weer voor onzekerheid gezorgd. Om een stom detail te noemen. Stel dat Britten komende zomer in 2021, als het eventueel weer kan, op vakantie zouden willen in de EU en je wil je hond meenemen. In het geval van een no-deal was het waarschijnlijk onmogelijk geweest. Moet je allerlei veterinaire checks af. Moet je een dierenpaspoort bij je hebben. Kortom, dat is maar één klein voorbeeld. En zo zijn er talloze hoe het leven er heel anders uit had komen te zien in het geval van een no-deal. Oftewel een Brexit zonder afspraken.
Nou, dat is dus nu niet het geval. Die afspraak is er, die deal. Sander van Hoorn, heb jij daar alweer nieuwe reacties bij jou in Brussel?
Wat reacties uit het Europees Parlement. Ik ga nu wat op schermpjes kijken, want ik heb ze net binnengekregen van Liesje Schrijnemacher. Zij is Europarlementariër voor de VVD. Zegt dat het nog wel belangrijk is dat het Europees Parlement zich erover gaat buigen. Maar dat er sprake is van opluchting, dat er natuurlijk een deal is. Dat het een breed en ambitieus bedrag is waar ook Nederland baat bij heeft. Naast het Verenigd Koninkrijk en de rest van de Europese Unie. En dat de samenwerking natuurlijk door moet gaan. Dat zie je ook bij Esther de Lange bijvoorbeeld. Die zegt, en zij is de fractievoorzitter van het CDA in het Europarlement. Zij zegt dat we hebben kunnen zien wat een no-deal-brexit voor een chaos had kunnen veroorzaken. Nou, Tim de Witte die had het er natuurlijk net al even over. En ze zegt het Europees Parlement zal er zo snel mogelijk over stemmen. En van belang voor haar is dat een eerlijke concurrentie op de interne markt die de Europese Unie is, dat die gewaarborgd is. Eerder al Kati Piri, zij is van de Partij van de Arbeid. Die zegt opgelucht te zijn, maar dat het nog geen uitgemaakte zaak is. Ook zij wijst er natuurlijk op dat het Europees Parlement zich er nog over moet buigen. En ze wijst erop dat het sowieso gevolgen gaat hebben voor mensen. En dat zie je eigenlijk bij alle drie die partijen terug. En ik denk dat ze daar wel een punt hebben. Dat het, ook al is er nu een deal, gevolgen gaat hebben voor bijvoorbeeld bedrijven die goederen willen exporteren naar het Verenigd Koninkrijk. Er zullen douaneformaliteiten zijn. Minder dan in het geval van een no-deal-brexit, maar ze zullen er zijn. Want zoals Ursula Von der Leyen, de commissievoorzitter, hier achter me ook zei tijdens haar persconferentie, het Verenigd Koninkrijk wordt een derde land. Het is geen lid meer van de Europese Unie. Daar hebben we nu goede afspraken mee gemaakt. Maar het blijft een derde land. En dus zul je bepaalde goederen moeten controleren, zul je douaneformaliteiten hebben. Dat is lastig voor het Verenigd Koninkrijk, maar dat is natuurlijk ook lastig voor Nederlandse bedrijven die nog maar een week hebben om zich daarop voor te bereiden. Daar zullen we dus de reacties ook wel van krijgen de komende tijd. Wat moeten we kunnen doen om na 1 januari die oversteek te kunnen blijven maken met onze producten. Dus veel onduidelijkheid nog. Nou ja, dat er nu in elk geval ietsje minder onduidelijkheid is. Daar zijn in elk geval de Europarlementariërs van het CDA, de Partij van de Arbeid en de VVD tevreden mee. Andere reacties zullen zo meteen ongetwijfeld komen. Benieuwd ook naar de reactie van Boris Johnson, want dat is natuurlijk inmiddels de man waar we op aan het wachten zijn.
Ja, maar dat vindt hij niet zo erg. Dat gebeurt wel vaker bij Johnson. Nog meer aandacht dadelijk. En daarom praat ik nog even met jou door, want jij noemt de lastige dingen waar we nu tegenaan gaan lopen. Met de handel bijvoorbeeld met Groot-Brittannië. Is dat ook niet een beetje wat de EU wil? Om maar te laten zien, ja, dit is dan wat je krijgt. Zodat niet dadelijk van 27 naar 26, 25 of 24 lidstaten gaan.
Er zullen ongetwijfeld mensen zijn die dat als tweede agenda hebben. Maar ik denk dat voor heel veel mensen, ik weet dat in elk geval voor Nederland de eerste agenda toch is, wat we in elk geval niet willen, is dat er een land is waar de bedrijven oneerlijke concurrentie kunnen bedrijven met de bedrijven bijvoorbeeld uit Nederland of uit andere delen van de Europese Unie. Want uiteindelijk is de redenering in Nederland natuurlijk dat de interne markt van de Europese Unie vooral een verdienmodel is. Daar verdienen wij enorm veel geld aan en op het moment dat je iets dat laat aantasten, dan moet je daar voorzichtig mee zijn. En ik denk dat Nederlandse diplomaten en ambtenaren dit akkoord de komende dagen, misschien tijdens de kerst, maar anders zeker daarna ook op die punten gaan doorlezen. Hebben wij er voldoende vertrouwen in dat een product wat uit het Verenigd Koninkrijk komt en een product wat ook in Nederland gemaakt wordt, dat die niet opeens veel lagere energiekosten of veel lagere arbeidskosten of veel lagere CO2-heffingen kunnen gaan betalen dan de bedrijven hier in Nederland. Want dan wordt het Nederlandse product natuurlijk veel duurder en dan heb je dat concurrentienadeel. Dus daar zal de Nederlandse regering het bijvoorbeeld heel erg op gaan nalezen.
En Tim in Londen. Tim, wat voor Brexit is dit nu? Hoe zou je dat kunnen omschrijven?
Nou, dat is wel goed om je te realiseren. Het feit dat er nu een deal is, betekent niet dat alles blijft zoals het is. Boris Johnson heeft nooit een hele nauwe band, hele nauwe relatie met de EU nagestreefd. Dit kun je gerust nog steeds een harde Brexit noemen. Namelijk,
Tim, sorry, ik ontbreek je, want we kunnen luisteren naar zijn eigen woorden. Boris Johnson.
Take back control of their money, their borders, their laws and their waters and to leave the European Union. And earlier this year we fulfilled that promise in that we left on January the 31st with that oven-ready deal. Since that time, we've been getting on with our agenda, enacting the points-based immigration system that you voted for and that will come into force on January the 1st, doing free trade deals with 58 countries around the world, and preparing the new relationship with the EU. And there have been plenty of people who have told us that the challenges of the COVID pandemic have made this work impossible and that we should extend the transition period and incur yet more delay. And I rejected that approach precisely because beating COVID is our #1 national priority, and I wanted to end any extra uncertainty and to give this country the best possible chance of bouncing back strongly next year. And so I'm very pleased to tell you this afternoon that we have completed the biggest trade deal yet, worth £660 billion a year, a comprehensive Canada-style free trade deal between the UK and the EU, a deal that will protect jobs across this country, a deal that will allow goods, UK goods and components to be sold without tariffs and without quotas in the EU market, a deal which will, if anything, allow our companies and our exporters to do even more business with our European friends, and yet which achieves something that the people of this country instinctively January the 1st, we are outside the customs union and outside the single market. British laws will be made solely by the British Parliament, interpreted by UK judges sitting in UK courts, and the jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice will come to an end. We will be able to set our own standards, to innovate in the way that we want, to originate new frameworks for the sectors in which this country leads the world, from biosciences to financial services, artificial intelligence, and beyond. We'll be able to decide how and where we're going to stimulate new jobs and new hope with free ports, new green industrial zones. We'll be able to cherish our landscape and our environment in the way we choose, backing our farmers, backing British food and agricultural production. And for the first time since 1973, we will be an independent coastal state with full control of our waters, with the UK's share of fish in our waters rising substantially from roughly half today to closer to 2/3 in 5.5 years' time, after which there is no theoretical limit beyond those placed by science or conservation on the quantity of our own fish that we can fish in our waters. And to get ready for that moment, those fishing communities will be helped with a big £100 million programme to modernise their fleets and the fish processing industry. And I want to stress that although, of course, the arguments with our European friends and partners were sometimes fierce, this is, I believe, a good deal for the whole of Europe and for our friends and partners as well. Because it will not be a bad thing, in my view, for the EU to have a prosperous and dynamic and contented UK on your doorstep. And it will be a good thing. It will drive jobs and prosperity across the whole continent. And I don't think it'd be a bad thing if we in the UK do things differently or take a different approach to legislation. Because in so many ways, our basic goals are the same. And in the context of this giant free trade zone that we're jointly creating, the stimulus of regulatory competition will, I think, benefit us both. And if one side believes it's somehow being unfairly undercut by the other, then subject to independent third-party arbitration and provided the measures are proportionate, we can, either of us, decide as sovereign equals to protect our consumers or businesses. But this treaty explicitly envisages that such action should only happen infrequently. And the concepts of uniformity and harmonisation are banished in favour of mutual respect and mutual recognition and free trade. And for squaring that circle, for finding the philosopher's stone that's enabled us to do this, I want to thank President von der Leyen, Ursula von der Leyen of the European Commission, our brilliant negotiators led by Lord Frost, Michel Barnier on the EU side, as Stephanie Risso, as well as Oliver Lewis, Tim Barrow, Lindsay Appleby, many others. Their work will be available for scrutiny, followed by a parliamentary vote, I hope, on December the 30th. This agreement, this deal, above all, means certainty. It means certainty for the aviation industry and the hauliers who have suffered so much in the COVID pandemic. It means certainty for the police, the border forces, the security services, all those we rely on across Europe to keep us all safe. It means certainty for our scientists, who will be able to work together and continue to work together on great collective projects, because although we want in the UK to be a science superpower, we also want to be a collaborative science superpower. And above all, it means certainty for business, from financial services to our world-leading manufacturers, our car industry, certainty for all those who are working in high-skilled jobs and in firms and factories across the whole country. Because there will be no palisade of tariffs on January the 1st, and there'll be no non-tariff barriers to trade. Instead, there will be a giant free trade zone of which we will at once be a member and at the same time be able to do our own free trade deals as one UK, whole and entire England, Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales together. And I should stress, this deal was done by a huge negotiating team from every part of the UK, and it will benefit every part of our United Kingdom, helping to unite and level up across the country. And so I say again, directly to our EU friends and partners, I think this deal means a new stability and a new certainty in what has sometimes been a fractious and difficult relationship. We will be your friend, your ally, your supporter, and indeed, never let it be forgotten, your number one market. Because although we have left the EU, this country will remain culturally, emotionally, historically, strategically, geologically attached to Europe. Not least, of course, through the 4 million EU nationals who have requested to settle in the UK over the last 4 years and who make an enormous contribution to our country and to our lives. And I say to all of you at home at the end of this toughest of years that our focus in the weeks ahead is, of course, on defeating the pandemic and on beating coronavirus and rebuilding our economy and delivering jobs across the country. And I'm utterly confident that we can and will do it. By today, we've vaccinated almost 800,000 people. And we've also today resolved a question that has bedeviled our politics for decades. And it is up to us all together as a newly and truly independent nation to realize the immensity of this moment and to make the most of it. Happy Christmas to you all. That's the good news from Brussels. Now for the sprouts. Actually, it's now for the media. Let's go to the media, who I think we've got Laura Koonsberg. Over to you, Laura.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. We're yet to see the text of this deal, which we understand runs to some 2,000 pages. You've presumably had the benefit of poring over every word, or maybe perhaps not every single word. But can you tell the public honestly, where did the UK give the most ground, and where did the EU compromise the most, do you think?
Thanks, Laura. Well, actually, it's only about 500 pages, and I think it would, and it's readily intelligible. I think it would be fair to say that we wanted to make sure, for instance, that we got access to, got complete control of our fisheries from the get-go, and that's just to say we had annual negotiations on fisheries within the shortest possible delay. The EU began with, I think, wanting a transition period of 14 years. We wanted 3 years. We've ended up at 5 years. I think that was a reasonable transition period, and I can assure great fish fanatics in this country, we will, as a result of this deal, be able to catch and eat quite prodigious quantities of extra fish. So that's why we're going to have to make these investments in the fishing sector. Thanks very much, Laura. Let's go to Robert Peston of ITV. Sorry, Robert, you need to unmute. You need to unmute, Robert.
Prime Minister, you said all along you wanted a Canada-style deal, but what you've agreed means that we in the UK have to follow EU rules on subsidies, on tax, on workers' rights, on the environment, or potentially incur the imposition of tariffs. That's right, isn't it? I mean, we've just heard Ursula Von der Leyen say that she got her level playing field, which you've explicitly rejected all the way through. You also just said there would be no non-tariff barriers. Again, that's not right. From January the 1st, as a result of leaving the customs union, and Michael Gove has been warning about this week in, week out for months, there is a ton of new bureaucracy on British businesses, lots of new non-tariff barriers. This is not to say the deal is a bad deal, but you're not selling it correctly, are you? You're mis-selling it.
No. Well, I must respectfully disagree with you, because there is indeed a clause in the deal which is nothing like as damaging as it was, and is, in my view, neutralised, which says that if either country feel that the other one is in some way undercutting them or dumping in some way, then subject to arbitration, and provided the measure is proportionate, and that, I mean, independent arbitration, not arbitration by the European Court of Justice, but subject to an independent panel, they can, if they really choose, put on tariffs to protect their consumers and their businesses. And to give you an example of the kind of thing where that might occur, for instance, in the UK, we want to go further on animal welfare standards. And it might be that we do things, for instance, on how you rear pigs, banning sow crates and so on, that would incur extra costs for our pig farmers. And it might be that bacon coming from elsewhere from the EU was at risk of, therefore, of undercutting us. We might, under those circumstances, consider imposing tariffs. I think it's highly unlikely, but we might consider it. It would have to be subject to arbitration. It would have to be proportionate according to the arbitrator, and under no circumstances would we be in any way constrained, legally or otherwise, by anything that the EU did or chose to do themselves, nor, furthermore, would there be any role for the European Court of Justice. And for people at home who have zoned out while I've been talking about this, let me tell you, this is a very, very long day's march from where we were a few years ago. You will remember, Robert, when we were talking about basically having a common rule book with the EU and having dynamic alignment with EU laws, so that the UK was forced to keep step. And that has gone from this treaty insofar as the EU wanted it, and there is no role for the European Court of Justice whatever. So I think it's a great treaty. And as for your point about non-tariff barriers, yes, I think it's important to stress. What I'm talking about is barriers on the grounds of your plugs won't work in our country, therefore they're banned or whatever. That kind of technical barriers to trade, and there's a lot in this treaty to try to reduce all that kind of thing, make sure that doesn't happen. That's a good thing. That's a good thing for businesses and consumers, and in that sense, it's a great free trade deal. But I must stress to people getting ready for January the 1st that there will be change. So people will need get on the gov.uk website. Exporters will need their AORI forms and everything else. People should be aware of the change that is coming. But there's also an opportunity, because for British exporters now, the whole world will be treated the same for export purposes. And I think that would actually galvanise our exporters to think much more positively and dynamically about the opportunities that they have. So I must respectfully disagree with both the points that you made. This is a jumbo Canada-style free trade deal of exactly the kind that I think this country needs. And as I say, I believe it resolves a long-standing and very, very difficult problem. People said you couldn't be part of of a free trade zone with the EU without being obliged to follow EU laws. If you remember, people, I think there was I think we were told we couldn't have our cake and eat it, and that kind of thing. I'm not going to claim that this is a cakeist treaty, Robert, but you know, it's because that, but it is I believe what the country needs at this time, and the right way forward for the UK. Let's go to Sam Coates of Sky.
Prime Minister, you say this is an unprecedented deal that observes all your red lines and promises to the country. Can people trust that life will be better as a result of this deal and that there won't be any disruption even in the short term? And can you guarantee the government won't end up reopening elements of the new relationship in the years to come?
Well, Sam, I mean, really good questions. I mean, short term, yes, as I said just now, there are things we have to get right, processes that maybe people have to do that they need to be aware of, and I'm going to, that point really is worth reinforcing. I do believe that the freedoms that this treaty wins us, basically a new independence from the EU, are worth having. But, and so free ports, free trade deals, being able to do, as I say, to look after your livestock differently, improving your landscape in a different way, doing all sorts of things differently, regulating financial services differently, chemicals, all sorts of things where we may want to do things differently and better. But I would just say to people watching this, and I'm sorry for disturbing Cars 3, by the way, to people watching this, I would say it's one thing to get freedom. Winning freedom is a fantastic thing, and that this is an important element of what we've done. But it's how we use it, how we make the most of it. That's what's going to matter in the months and years to come. And I've no doubt that we can do fantastic things with this treaty if we with this new relationship, which I think will be stable and prosperous for both sides. Let's go to Tom Newton-Dunn of Times Radio.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister, and thank you. A couple of quick questions, if you don't mind. Every deal means both sides have to compromise. Do you accept that you have compromised throughout the last 11 months, particularly perhaps the last 11 days, from perhaps your earlier slightly absolutist positions? Perhaps that was a negotiating ploy, but compromise is not a dirty word. Do you agree with that? And secondly, can you address services? Because I haven't heard you say much about that. 80%, of course, of the UK economy. You say some British companies would do more trade with the EU because of this deal. Will the British service sector, especially the financial services sector, will they be able to do more trade or less trade?
Well, there's a first of all on the compromise point. No, compromise isn't a dirty word, and unquestionably there are things that we've done to help our friends and partners to move things forward. I mentioned, I think, to Laura where we got to on fish. We started out wanting a very short transition period of 3 years. They wanted a much longer one of 14 years. We've compromised on that at 5.5. And on the vital services sector, yes, of course, they feature in this deal quite rightly. There's some good language about equivalence for financial services, perhaps not as much as we would have liked, but it is nonetheless going to enable our dynamic City of London to get on and prosper as never before. There's some good stuff about barristers, solicitors, lawyers being able to practice around the European Union. We will be able to continue to have massive and growing economic interpenetration without the need for what I've always talked about, this lunar pull of EU law. And as I say, this is something that I think can benefit people on both sides of the channel. It'll be a healthy, dynamic, productive, happy, stable relationship. That's what we're aiming for. Let's go to George Parker of the FT.
Thank you, Prime Minister. mentioned the change that will happen at the border in any event on January the 1st. I just wondered if there was anything in this deal where the two sides have agreed to introduce some sort of flexibility at the border to make sure we don't have chaos in Dover and Calais on January the 1st. And a second, more general point. You and I used to be reporters in Brussels, and we've covered the sort of psychodrama of British EU relations for a number of decades. Nigel Farage said today that the war is over. I just wondered if you saw it in those terms.
No, I think the first of all on the border and measures to there are all sorts of things in the treaty that what you will recognise about trusted trader schemes and special measures on sanitary and phytosanitary recognition and steps to make sure that things flow as smoothly as we possibly can. Though again, I stress that there will be things that people have to do. Look, I mean, the EU was and is an extraordinary concept, and it was born out of the agony of the Second World War, founded by idealistic people in France and Germany and Italy, who never wanted those countries to go to war with each other again, and other countries, Belgium, Holland, and others. And in many ways, it was and is a very noble enterprise. So I don't recognise the kind of language that you talk of. I think that the UK's own relationship with it was always difficult. We always found some of the language about ever closer union, the idea of this political union, this very dense idea of this ideology of endless integration, we found quite hard, George. And I think you as a fellow Brussels reporter, you'll remember that there was quite a lot of friction involved. I think that what we've got here is the basis of a new long-term friendship and partnership that basically stabilizes that relationship. And insofar as the UK needs to be, and always must be, a great European power, always must be a great European power, we're there outside the main body of the EU, but we're there as a friend and as a supporter, as a flying buttress, if you like, to make sure, as we have done so many times in the last couple of hundred years, that we're able to lend our voice when it's needed and to be of value to our European friends and partners in a strategic way. And that's what the UK will obviously continue to do. But I think the very dense programme of integration wasn't right for the UK, and that's why it was right to take back control in the way that we have. And I think that this deal expresses what the people of the country voted for in 2016, and I think there was a wisdom in what they decided, and I think that we'll be able to go forward on this basis. Let's go to Gordon Rayner of The Telegraph.
Thank you, Prime Minister, and Merry Christmas for tomorrow. Could I just ask, probably half the people watching this right now would have voted Remain in the referendum in 2016. Do you have a particular message for them? People today are tweeting that this is a bad deal, that it's not what they wanted. They would rather have stayed in. What's your message to them? And just secondly, could I also ask you, we've had more figures today on COVID. You mentioned COVID earlier. Can you rule out another national lockdown after Christmas?
Well, Gordon, thanks. I think my message to everybody on both sides of the divide is of that argument in 2016 is I really think it's now a long time behind us, and I think most people that I talk to, whichever way they were inclined to vote back then, just want it settled and want us to move on. And I think this gives us the platform, the foundation for a really prosperous new relationship, and I would be very excited now by this deal. This European question has been going on for decades. Exactly what relationship we should have. This is a great new free trade deal, a trading relationship and partnership that I think will bring prosperity to both sides of the channel. And on coronavirus and the struggle there, obviously we face a very considerable new pressures, particularly from the new variant and the speed with which that's been spreading. We believe that we're going to have to get through this tough period now with, as I said many times, very tough restrictions with tough tiering, and you'll have seen what's been announced over the last day or so about that. And much as I regret that, I do think it is necessary for us to grip this virus now, to stop it running out of control in January, because we need to buy ourselves time to get the vaccine into as many arms of the elderly and vulnerable as we can. And that is the real way in which we will defeat the virus. So it's tough tiering, community testing, and rolling out the vaccine. And we're going to continue with that approach. And I know that it's been very, very tough over the last few weeks, and I must tell people it will continue to be difficult, not least basically because of the speed with which the new variant is spreading. But the vaccine is going into people's arms, and there really is now, I think, hope, the certainty that we will have it defeated, as I say, by the spring. Or that's certainly what the scientists still believe, and they're still confident of that. So thanks very much, Gordon. Let's go to Harry Cole of The Sun.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Can you give us some more details about the new security arrangements with the EU? Are we going to be as safe next week under your new security partnership as we are today, given Brussels are saying that they're going to lock us out of live EU databases? And given you've locked us all up, how will you recommend we celebrate leaving the EU next week?
Well, Harry, look, I leave your manner of celebration entirely to you and to individual taste. I wouldn't want. I mean, I think the government done quite enough bossing people around, recommending this or that over the last 10 months or so. But on security and police cooperation, I'm absolutely confident this is a deal that protects our police cooperation, protects our ability to catch criminals and to share intelligence across the European continent in the way that we have done for many years. So I don't think people should have fears on that score, or indeed on any score. Let's go to Heather Stewart of The Guardian.
Hello, Prime Minister. Michel Barnier said today that we decided to leave the Erasmus exchange scheme, which sent thousands of students to EU countries every year. I wonder what you'd say to young people who feel as though opportunities to discover the continent on our doorstep by living there or studying there or working there are being taken away from them. And secondly, just do you have a message for Keir Starmer, who will have to decide in the coming hours and days how to whip Labour MPs, whether they should support your deal?
Right, Heather. Well, look, on Erasmus, it was a tough decision. The issue really was that, as you know, the UK is a massive net contributor to the continent's higher education economy, because over the last decades we've had so many EU nationals, which it's been a wonderful thing. But our arrangements basically mean that financially the UK exchequer more or less loses out on the deal. Erasmus was also extremely expensive. So what we're doing is producing a UK scheme for students to go around the world, and it'll be called the Turing scheme, and it will so students will have the opportunity to named after Alan Turing. So the students will have the opportunity not just to go to European universities, but to go to the best universities in the world, because we want our young people to experience the immense intellectual stimulation of Europe, but also of the whole world. And as for, I think you asked about which way should the opposition vote on this. Well, it's perfectly obvious, Heather. The opposition should vote for this excellent deal, and I would strongly encourage everybody to do the same. Thank you very much, everybody. Happy Christmas to you all. Thank you.
Ja, daarmee zijn we aan het einde gekomen van deze stream. En even kort de belangrijkste punten die ik heb opgeschreven. Allereerst, iedereen lijkt heel erg opgelucht dat er nu eindelijk een deal is. Dus dat is denk ik goed nieuws. En hard nodig. En de handel die kan gewoon plaats gaan vinden. Plaats blijven vinden, moet ik zeggen, na 1 januari. Het lijkt dat beide partijen overwinningen kunnen claimen. De Europese Unie heeft het level playing field gekregen waar ze zo op hebben gehamerd. En als de Britten zich er niet aan houden, dan kunnen de sancties opgelegd worden en tarieven. Maar er komt er geen Europese Hof van Justitie aan te pas, maar een onafhankelijke arbitrage. Hoe dat verder is, moeten we verder lezen in het deal. Die is 2000 pagina's. Het Erasmus-programma voor het uitwisselen van studenten, daar doen de Britten niet aan mee. En de visrechten zijn vastgelegd voor 5 jaar tegen de wil van de Britten in. Dus er lijken wat overwinningen en een compromis voor beide partijen in te zitten. Dus ik denk dat iedereen het wel als een overwinning zou kunnen uitleggen, wat altijd belangrijk is natuurlijk. Boris Johnson noemde het een Canada-style deal die hij altijd wilde. Ja, in ieder geval, we gaan afwachten wat er uit de 2000 pagina's komen. Daarmee komt deze stream ten einde. Dank voor het meekijken. En kijk nog even rond op mijn kanaal. Geef een like als je het leuk vond en wellicht abonneer je ook. Ik zie jullie later. Ciao, ciao. Plaats gaan vinden. Plaats blijven vinden, moet ik zeggen, na 1 januari. Het lijkt dat beide partijen overwinningen kunnen claimen. De Europese Unie heeft het level playing field gekregen waar ze zo op hebben gehamerd. En als de Britten zich er niet aan houden, dan kunnen de sancties opgelegd worden en tarieven. Maar er komt er geen Europese Hof van Justitie aan te pas, maar een onafhankelijke arbitrage. Hoe dat verder is, moeten we verder lezen in het deal. Die is 2000 pagina's. Het Erasmus-programma voor het uitwisselen van studenten, daar doen de Britten niet aan mee. En de visrechten zijn vastgelegd voor 5 jaar tegen de wil van de Britten in. Dus er lijken wat overwinningen en een compromis voor beide partijen in te zitten. Dus ik denk dat iedereen het wel als een overwinning zou kunnen uitleggen, wat altijd belangrijk is natuurlijk. Boris Johnson noemde het een Canada-style deal die hij altijd wilde. Ja, in ieder geval, we gaan afwachten wat er uit de 2000 pagina's komen. Daarmee komt deze stream ten einde. Dank voor het meekijken.